Today on Relic Roads, we're heading deep into Arizona's Copper Corridor, an area that for over a century has been defined by its massive mines and small communities. We're visiting a place that is everything you can imagine when you hear the term living ghost town. The home to the largest standing structures for hundreds of miles with its towering smelter smokestacks, which, as we'll see, have also made it the focus of a massive environmental cleanup. But to understand the place we're going, we have to start where it all begins. This is the Ray Mine. A lot of the old mining camps out here in this area of the desert originally started out as rugged silver claims in the 1880s. But by the year 1900, the focus was entirely on copper. Still is to this day. That's why places like this, the old town of Ray, Arizona, have been completely engulfed by the open pit copper mine. After decades of extracting, the mines underground become less fruitful and the ground above them becomes less stable. At that point, the topsoil and everything beneath it becomes a part of the mine itself, creating the open pit. In the case of Ray, Arizona, that included the land that the town was built on. They haul millions of tons of ore out of the earth, but only a small percentage of it is the actual metals and resources they need to strip it down to. And to get to that stuff, it all has to be crushed, concentrated, and melted down. That's where we're headed. To a town that was built to process it all. And did, for over 100 years. Hayden, Arizona. As we drive into town, you can see the smelter towers in the background. This place isn't located immediately on top of a mine like many of the other towns around here. Instead, this place was built specifically to process all the ore from those mines. Hayden was officially founded in 1909 specifically as a company town to house workers for the new smelters. By 1910, they brought in the railroad and opened up the post office. Driving through these neighborhoods, it looks pretty quiet today. But back in 2008, this whole area was declared an EPA Superfund alternative site. For almost 100 years, the smelter operations coated these towns in lead, arsenic, and copper dust. The EPA did a massive site assessment, and eventually work crews had to physically dig up all the contaminated topsoil in over 250 different residential yards and commercial lots. They hauled it all away and brought in clean dirt. They even spent millions paving the back roads and alleys to keep the toxic dust from kicking back up into the air. Unfortunately, though, roads don't last long in the desert. Up here's the old jailhouse from the early 1900s. Doesn't look like it's been used for a while. We're back in the middle of town on Hayden Avenue here. Just up on the left is the original grammar school from when the town was first founded. And there's the police station on the right. That old church again up here. Not only are many of these buildings abandoned, but some of them are also burnt, as you've seen. At one point in this town's past, they experienced a string of fires. Many of them believed to be arson, and all of which didn't begin until about 40 years ago after a big wave of economic collapse that this area had experienced. That skyline is what Hayden has become most known for. If you look to the north side of the plant, which is on the left side of our screen, you can see that shorter white stack. It's still massive at about 600 feet tall. It was part of the old Kennecott Copper Company smelter, which hasn't been in operation since the 1980s. And to the south of it, on the right side of our screen here, is the Asarco smelter. Look at that 1,000-foot giant. And next to it is the Hayden Concentrator plant. built in 1911. We're going to take a closer look at that concentrator in just a little bit. For now, we're going to go check out the smelter tower. This was built in 1974 to help push sulfur dioxide higher up into the wind. It's actually the tallest freestanding structure in the entire state of Arizona. You can see the older smelter tower in the background too. From this perspective, those water tanks, which you know are massive, they just look so small next to these giant towers reaching into the sky. The smelter hasn't operated since 2019. But it wasn't the environmental issues that shut it down. It was a union strike. We're back on the other side of the plant, right in the heart of town. The industry sits right next to the main streets and all the neighborhoods surrounding it, as you can see. That building on the left is the local library, and then just across this grass courtyard is the community pool. Originally built by the company when this place was still a full-blown company-owned town, immediately next to the concentrator plant. Really paints a picture of what life has been like in this town for a long time. At one point, this concrete slab was decorated with placards recognizing the mining company's contribution to the community. They've all been removed. I think that gives us a look at the modern generation's more complicated relationship with the smelter and the mining company. Looks like a pretty nice pool all in all. Again, can't get over how strange it looks with those towers in the background. And then just off to the side, we have the local playgrounds. Actually, this playground gives us the best look at what's going on in that concentrator plant. The last time I was here in town about a year ago, there was a giant rock crusher slowly spinning on the backside of the facility. It doesn't look like it's there because you could see it right from where I'm standing now. Yeah, actually this whole area looks a bit cleaned up. Let's get a better look, see if we can. Yeah, they're definitely getting this place cleaned up. And I can hear something running back there, maybe a generator. They do keep the generators and the water pumps going on a regular basis as they're keeping this place in more of a standby status. At least until they can get a green light to get it back in full operation. We're headed to the other side of town now, and this is really the only way to get there, following the railroads with that mountain on the other side. But that is not a natural mountain. That is a tailings mountain. These things stretch for miles in many directions around here, taking up hundreds if not thousands of acres. They pose a huge environmental risk to the groundwater in the area. To combat that, these mountains are regularly sprayed with water and chemical binders to keep the toxic dust from blowing away and to keep heavy metals from leaching into the groundwater sources. It may not be pretty, but it's real. The equipment I'm using to record this footage and the device that you're watching the video on, they're made with resources that come directly from places and communities like this. That's why today, before we head out of town, we're making a stop at the local Mount View Cemetery to pay respect to the generations of miners, railroad workers, and families that called this place home and put in hard work in a difficult place to live. But the generations aren't done yet. The open pit mines around here are huge because they've been digging for over 100 years in some cases, and they're all currently increasing in production and output following a global surge in demand for copper that fuels the electric infrastructure industry. And to support the increased mining, the company that owns the smelting operations in Hayden, ASARCO, American Smelting and Refining Company is what it's short for, They're currently in negotiations with unions to fire it back up again. Our last stop today is just outside of town in Kelvin, Arizona. This is the old Florence-Kelvin Highway bridge over the Gila River. Out in the distance, you can see more of those Tailings mountains. You can follow those things for miles on end around here. And here's the Gila River. The bridge we're on is over 100 years old and has been replaced with a more modern bridge that's just above us. This perspective gives you a much better look at how big those Tailings mountains are. I mentioned earlier that this bridge is over 100 years old. At the end here is a monument recognizing that. I believe this placard here has been in place since it was originally built. Built by the Topeka Bridge and Iron Company, 1916. Also on this side of the bridge is an old railroad crossing because this area of Kelvin was also an old mining ghost town. Obviously, vehicles don't need a railroad crossing here anymore, so the reason that this is still in place is because pedestrians still have a use. And that's because we are on the Arizona Trail right now. Just on the other side of this bridge where we first started is a sign that shows where the trail continues following along the river. Let's go check it out now. That's the bridge we just came back across. And right next to it here is the Arizona Trail. We're essentially right in the middle of this non-motorized hiking trail that crosses the entire state of Arizona for 800 miles. Many parts of it made up of old mining paths and travel trails that have been used for centuries. I wonder what the town of Hayden will look like if the old smelter does get fired back up again. Obviously it brings jobs and boosts the economy, but at what overall cost? And how many cycles of economic boom and bust can a community like that handle? I'm Rich, and this is Relic Roads. See you on the next one.